What's going on? What's going on? What's going on? About to sit here and check out this. I got a compilation basically of different people talking about Elvis Presley. So I'm about to check this out, see what they got to say, and see if we learn anything new. But let's check this out. Drop me a comment. Let me know what you think. Let's get it.
I mean, congratulations.
Only in America.
Oh, well, it's so much better than a magazine interview because I realized as I was talking, I could actually stop trying to hopelessly describe it and actually, you could hear it. The thing, I mean, okay, it's got Zeppelin and it's got Portishead and it's got Timbuktu and it's got all of those elements seamlessly woven together. But the other thing is, right at the heart of it is almost, it almost turns into, for 1 minute, what is the soul of a man? It almost goes back to the blues roots of it, and what's always there, it was always present in your work, no matter how many tangents go out on it, it always seems to go back to that blues core. And I'd like to talk, well, let me shut up for a moment. Let's talk about that. Let's talk about what got you into it and what keeps you going back to that source.
I don't know. I think maybe, and we all in this room have had a moment where music suddenly became the absolute only thing in your imagination and your mind. And for me as a kid, you know, I lived in England, and the whole radio setup, the whole exposure to music was really very muted. The post-war Britain was a very dour and very sort of understated and a place of where there wasn't a lot of dynamism. And as a kid, didn't know what was going on, you know. I was hanging out. I once wrote a song called White, Clean and Neat about hanging onto my mom's skirts and just being in the warmth of my mother's care and attention, but having no idea of what was going on. And then I heard Elvis. And, you know, I was about 9 or something like that, and this voice came across in amongst Pat Boone and Johnny Mathis and all the stuff that was part of the Valium that we still know about today. Elvis came straight through, and he had the Blue Note. He was listening to Sleepy John Estes. He was listening to guy did That's All Right, Mama. Thank you. Yeah, I get like that now. And he got all this stuff. Mystery Train, Junior Parker's Blue Flames. I didn't know anything about the references. I didn't know anything about what I know now, where it came from. But I heard that voice. And no matter how his image has been maligned and how it ended up, when I met Elvis with Led Zeppelin one evening in LA.
Oh, that alone, hold it, let's pause for a minute. Let's just drink that in for a second.
Hey, we could do this all around the country, you know.
Ed McMahon here.
Yeah, well, Elvis wanted to know who was this. He'd adopted a kid when he was in the forces in Germany in 1959, some sort of pen pal extremity thing, whatever it was. And this kid was a bit younger than the king himself, and was into Zeppelin. And we were involved with some people around that time who were booking our Elvis too. And Elvis wanted to know who was this bunch of guys who was selling tickets quicker than him. And so they said, it's Led Zeppelin. And we went to see him 2 or 3 times. And a couple of times he made mistakes. And I remember that night at the Forum, he was doing something like Reconsider Baby or whatever it was, the Lowell Fulson song.
Yeah.
And he stopped it and he said, wait a minute, we've got Led Zeppelin in here tonight, we've got to get this right. And I went, I mean, so I mopped the tears away, and we got the nod that we were going to meet him afterwards. And we went to the hotel, and they had the entire top floor. No motorbikes or snakes. They just had these trestle tables with a couple of big guys. And they ushered us to a suite down the hall. It was a tacky place. It was great. It was all purples and browns, and you know.
He carried that with him, I believe.
Yeah. Well, there's nothing wrong with that. The room was filling up with sort of second-hand Anne Margarets. There was a lot of...
Well, you know, it has to be said, a second-hand Anne Margaret is
nothing
still...
wrong with that. And I was looking at Stella Stevens over the other side of the room and salivating. It was a fantastic build-up. And the hall, at the end of this huge suite, which was almost as big as this room, a door kept opening and somebody kept popping their head around, just waiting for the temperature of the room and enough cosmetic to join the atmosphere so that it was getting a bit sort of feral. And then the door opened and this guy came through the door and my heart jumped. It was like, whoa, look at the way he moves. And I mean, he was just going around chairs like... He was so cool. And I mean, of course, he wasn't supposed to be cool, but he was, you know, a bit like us, I suppose. It's like and he came over to us and we stood in a circle for about 2 or 3 hours talking, and people kept coming by from his retinue, from his entourage, thinking that he'd had enough. He was going, no. We had a great conversation. And our manager, Led Zeppelin manager Peter Grant, is sort of quite well known as, probably as much as John Paul Jones, you know, big guy, a very great presence about him. And Peter was just going past us on the way to taking a seat somewhere in the homage area.
The second circle.
That's right, yeah. And he lost his footing a bit like our friend there, and he 350 pounds of joy ended up on Vernon Presley's lap. And Elvis's dad was really frail, with a white safari top. And we talked with Presley for about three hours. It just went on, and then we were talking about the root, and your question about where did it come from? It came from him, and he still got it. He still was into that whole Delta thing. He, you know, Good Rockin' Tonight, all that stuff that got him going in the first place. But he also knew, and he had a great sense of humor, and he knew that he was locked in this self-parody. I mean, when the songs dried up, when Lieber and Stoller and Pomus and Schumann, when that kind of whole era of creative writing started to wane and things changed, I didn't want to hear Elvis doing a Neil Diamond song.
Right.
I wanted him, I mean, it was bad enough him coming out of the army and doing Are You Lonesome Tonight, you know. I wanted him to stay wild, to give me all those edges, that kind of, that howl that he had. But, you know, he was just amazing and spectacular, and it was just that he really opened the door to my whole love of music. And because of him, and because of the choice of his material, I found out Smiley Lewis, you know, I found all those great singers, and now all these box sets that come out, some of the stuff that he did in the 60s and was quite so well crafted.
Yeah.
Hank Garland's guitar playing, the stuff at RCA in Nashville, I mean, the recording of it, and his humor in the middle of it all is great. So it was a dream come true to meet him, but it was also just by chance that I heard him, and it affected me the way it did. And from Elvis straight through to the Tuareg guys in Timbuktu, it's a straight line.
Yeah.
It curves a bit, but the blue note is there all the way through my life. It's just calling to me.
Well, you know, and I think that's the thing, that the more time that goes by, the easier it is for people to get confused about how important Elvis's moment was, because, you know, because there's always the feeling that, well, they're not giving enough credit to Chuck Berry and Bo Diddley and Little Richard and so on, which is true.
Right.
But Elvis rearranged the mainstream. If Elvis hadn't taken it from How Much Is That Doggy in the Window and turned it into this is mainstream popular music, then Little Richard and Chuck Berry and Jerry Lee Lewis would not have had the opportunity to get through it all.
Sure, and he was also white, which was
That's right.
crucial, because that gave him the foot in the door that maybe Alan Freed was trying to do with Chuck and Bo and all that sort of stuff. But he was, and he was a great-looking guy, and he actually, that physical representation, by the time he got to England, guys were like hitting themselves on the head. Bang, what's going on? Who's this human being? It was fantastic in the middle of all that crap. You know, there was one shining star, and then of course you get exposed to, I mean, Bo Diddley the Man and all that stuff.
Yeah.
And I was just, as you say, in the dark with my radio.
So
you know, as many times as we've talked on television and had interview situations, I've never asked you about Elvis.
What you want to know?
When did that all start? When did the whole love for Elvis begin?
He teases me about Elvis all the time.
But
And
never on the air, never.
No, when he says, like, if Elvis was alive now, he said, man, you wouldn't even hang out with Elvis. I said, yes, I would. He said, man, Elvis would be in the lobby of your house like, say, man, is Eddie there? And I'd be in the room, tell him I'm not here. Hey, what's going on, man? He told me to come over. Oh, I know what's going on. All right. But when I was a kid, see, Elvis Presley to me, it's his presence, I think it is. I don't think anyone in this business has had as much presence as Elvis. I don't think anyone's had as strong a presence. I think there have been entertainers. I think Michael Jackson's the only entertainer who's ever been more famous than him. But I think Elvis has more presence. Like when Elvis walked in the room, everybody just looked at Elvis. You know, when he's on the screen, you looked at Elvis. He just had this thing about him. And he was going through all this stuff with drugs and all this craziness. But on screen and on stage, he always looked like he was in control. You know, and that's amazing because there was this war going on inside this guy. And I'm just fascinated with him, you know.
Do you see similarities in Elvis and Eddie Murphy?
None whatsoever.
Really?
Well, it started off, Elvis is very white. And I'm very black. Elvis is from Memphis, and I've never been to Memphis. And had I gone back then, they probably would have...
Right.
So I don't see any similarities. I just admire his presence, you know.
When you think of actors that you've worked with, some of the more surreal experiences, Elvis Presley and King Creole, was that a little bit of a different movie to work on?
Well, that was acting for me, you know. I was playing Maxie Fields, the gangster.
What was your impressions of Elvis?
Well, actually, he was a very modest kid, or at least he behaved that way with me, and very polite. The first thing he said to me was, Mr. Mathaw, he said, if you could help me out with this acting, I sure would appreciate it. And I said, Elvis, I've seen you act, you don't need any help from me.
Well, I have one question about your stand-up days when you were in Las Vegas. Is it true that Elvis Presley came and visited you backstage once?
Yes. I was opening the show for Anne Margaret, and he knew Anne Margaret, and he came backstage, and he passed by me in the hall, and he looked at me and he said, son, you have an oblique sense of humor.
What was your reaction to that?
I was just, thank you, Mr. Presley.
Now, Whitney, your mother, quite a singer in her own right. Mm-hmm. Now, she was a member of the Sweet Inspirations group that backed up Elvis Presley. Now, what memories do you have of that?
I remember when I was, I really don't know how old I was at the time, but I remember my mother receiving a phone call from whomever Elvis had employed to call people, whatever, and saying that he wanted the Sweets back to do his comeback show in Vegas. I remember my mother being very enthusiastic about it, but very concerned that she'd have to leave her children for a month. And I remember her, she was so like, her whole thing was, Mommy loves you and Mommy wants to stay home, but Mommy's got to go to work to make sure that you have this and make sure that you all are taken care of. So me and Daddy have to go. And we, because my father was my mother's manager. Me and Daddy have to go, and that whole thing. And I just remember how she was leaving, how she really didn't want to leave us, but she had to go. And I remember that month, and I remember all the hoopla about Elvis in Vegas. And I was so proud that my mother was there with him, because it was a very big event. Yeah.
I'm the kid who kicks Elvis in the shins. I mean, that's what I've done with my life, I guess. It was really the only reason I had a chance at it was a casting woman named Joyce Selznick who said, I think I've got an idea for this. I think I got an idea of a guy who could play it. And Joyce and I knew each other from having met with each other 5 or 6 times on different projects. I'd never done a show never been hired by Joyce. And it was basically her idea, and it worked. And it worked, yeah.
I know you've always been fascinated with Elvis Presley. If he was still alive and you two were to sit down, I mean, what would you talk about?
I don't know. You know, one of the things that's fascinating about Elvis is how he became consumed by fame and how fame destroyed him. That's one of the things that's fascinating. I mean, I have the regular fan thing too, where, you know, I like the Jailhouse Rock number. But what's fascinating about him as I've become older, you know, and it's gotten past, you know, oh, he's cool, Elvis. It's like, wow, everything, you know, and how the people around him just let him destroy himself, and how he was still famous. And then after he's dead, then you hear all of this stuff, you know. It's like, wow, all that was going on when we was thinking he was super cool Elvis, you know. So it's just Elvis is fascinating just because it's like, this is what fame can do to you, you know.
That wasn't bad though. That wasn't bad at all. I enjoyed the Robert Plant one probably most. To be honest, I really I don't know. It seemed like Eddie Murphy really didn't know too much about Elvis. Like when I hear a motherfucker say Jailhouse Rock, I'd be like, "What's next? Blue suede shoes? Like fuck out of here." But yeah, I get a kick out of listening to people talk about this man when it's in a good light. Um, I didn't know that Whitney Houston's dad was the manager for the Sweet Inspirations. Did not know that. So, or manager to her mom. I did not know that. But like I said, the Robert Plant one, I enjoyed that because you always get them stories when somebody says like they meet him and they just get stuck in these conversations for like hours talking about a number of things from gospel to just music arrangements to just life and things like that, and spiritual outlets and all that good stuff. So I enjoy the Robert Plant one a lot, and I'm a huge Robert Plant fan slash Led Zeppelin most definitely. But hopefully you enjoyed that right there. Feel free to drop me a comment. Let me know what you think.